Welcome to Livingstone Ranch.
So today I'm flavoring sourdough. I have one dough laying out right here, but I usually do two at a time. So once you have let your sourdough ferment overnight, then you're going to scrape it out. And this is just regular all-purpose flour that's on the countertop. And you're going to be careful not to get any extra water that might be in the bottom of your bowl into your dough. And then I immediately rinse mine off because it's way easier to keep it clean than to try to get it off later. So I spray mine off right away. You're just going to want to get everything off of the bowl the best you can. All right, good enough. So then you're just going to lay your dough out kind of in a rectangle shape. Now, as you can see, this one's a lot wetter than that one. So I usually put a little bit more all-purpose flour onto the dough just to kind of help soak up some of that extra moisture, especially if I'm putting moisture into the dough to flavor it. Today I'm doing a sun-dried tomato basil pesto, and so that will add a lot more moisture. So I want to make sure that the dough isn't sticking so much to my fingertips when I'm touching it and poking it. But as you can see, it kind of creates little bubbles in the dough. So I'm going to clean my hands off of the trash. Not perfectly, but I just don't want all those like dough chunks stuck to me, because then when I try to fold the dough, it's going to stick to the dough. So as I said, doing sun-dried tomato basil pesto. So this is a pre-made pesto, but you can make your own. If I had a garden here, which I will eventually, then I'll grow the basil to be able to make my own. So I'm just putting little spoonfuls, as you can see, just kind of randomly on top of the dough. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the sun-dried tomato. And this is, again, pre-made sun-dried tomato pesto. And like I said, if I eventually have my own garden, I will make my own. And then after this, I'm just going to take the back of my spoon and I'm just going to kind of spread it around. So that way when I cook the bread, it doesn't just have huge chunks of moisture stuck in the middle of it, because then the bread around those chunks would be too wet and it wouldn't cook all the way through. So I'm just smearing it around. And then I try to get off whatever is on the spoon. Rinse the spoon. Then I have some pink Himalayan sea salt. It's in flakes, and I just feel like it works a little bit better. It adds more flavor. And I just kind of sprinkle that on top of my loaves. All right, so now I'm going to fold it into a loaf. I have two sourdough bread baskets here, and I'm making sure that I'm getting flour, and it's just regular all-purpose. I used organic unbleached flour to coat my baskets, so that way the dough doesn't stick to them. And then I'm going to take the bread, dough lightly with my hands, and I'm just gonna flop it in, just fold it, all of the flavor into the middle of the dough. And then I'm gonna flip it upside down, and I'm gonna just put the flour around it so it doesn't start crawling anywhere, because it will, to keep it in that shape. And I'm gonna let it sit like this for a few minutes. Same thing, just flop it in, fold it into each other. Then you're gonna carefully flip it upside down. And remember, make that wheel of flour around so it doesn't grow. Okay, so typically I would let this sit for maybe like 8 minutes before I start working with it, just to give it a little bit more time to rise, and also give it a little bit more time to not be as wet. And so I put like a little extra flour on top before I try to flip it or fold it or mold it with my hands, so that hopefully the dough doesn't stick to me as much. But for today time, I'm just going to go ahead and start with the dough. So again, put that flour on top. You're going to flip it upside down the way that you did when you put it in together. And you're just going to make folds on either side, right, left, roll, and then shape it into a ball. Now it's really wet, so you're going to get it good with the flour again. You're going to flip it back over to the messy side. Fold, 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 roll, roll, roll. Shape it like a bread loaf ball. And then it's okay if some of the flavoring comes up to the outside. That's okay. But you're just going to want it to be a ball, basically, bread loaf ball. And then you're going to flip it upside down. The pretty side down goes into the floured basket. Then you're going to cover this either with saran wrap or a tea towel and put it in the fridge. And you're going to let it sit anywhere between 1 and 6 hours. It at least has to be in the fridge for an hour before you bake it. So I'm flipping it back over to that ugly side. I'm going to scoop it in my arms, put it in, and I'm going to pinch the bottom together so it kind of creates a seam. Now, as you see, it's kind of wet here, so I'm just going to cover it with the flour. And then I would cover this and put it in the fridge. So you can watch me do this one again. You're going to flip it back over. You're going to right or left, right, left, right, left, right, or right, left, whichever one. Roll it, shape it into a ball, cover it with flour, flip it again. Right, left, left, right, left, right. Roll, roll, roll. Shape it into a ball. Flour on top. So you only do it 2 times. You don't have to do it more than that. I like simple. I don't like over doing something, making something too complicated. Throw it in, pinch, 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 create that seam. If there's any wet parts, put that extra flour on. Now, as it sits in the fridge, it's going to rise again for another second proofing, which is what it's called. It's allowing the dough to expand and grow, and it's also letting it soak in more of the flavor before you bake it. So I'll come back when it's time to bake, and I'll show you that process. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.